way it's taken is, it's not so much a feeling as it's a judgment, right? Is this going to work out or not? Should I invest in this or not? What can I do, right? So maybe we'll land right where we are right now, right? Do you have a good feeling about how this is going to work out? No. Right? Do you have a clear plan about how it's going to work out? Like this can do it, right? So if we're waiting for the plan, it's going to be too late, and we sure as hell can't wait for the field, right? And I'd like to suggest to you that notion of hope is perhaps a trap. It's the modern self, where the modern self is trapped. The modern self, as Charles Taylor would describe it, my favorite Canadian grandfather who I'd never had, the modern buffered self is detached from the world, engages it from a distance, right? So we have sensory input coming in, and we consider that, and we have feelings about that, and thoughts about that, and we might step back out and act, right? So that's Descartes, that's Kant. It's also, I suggest, this. Right, there's the screen. Right, there's the self monitoring the world from a distance. And so we might be frozen there, and it might be that sense of the self. So I turned to this, I'm a Catholic theologian, Thomas Aquinas, 1225, 1275, wrote a lot about hope. I thought I'll go read Aquinas and have something good to say. I'll try. And so I'm reading Aquinas, and Aquinas is not saying anything that I want Aquinas to say. Hope's not a virtue for him. Ordinary hope's not a virtue, it's a passion, withheld passion. These are not what I wanted him to be saying. The more I studied it, the more I learned about it, the more amazing it became. So hope for Aquinas is a passion for a difficult future good that's possible. And you might notice there that that's actually the source of that common shared definition we have today, except they just put it through a meat grinder, scraped out all the meat, and just left you with, I don't know what. So the good stuff's gone, but the words are still there. So let's go through those words. What's a passion? So we translate that into emotion. Passion for Aquinas is a wild thing. This is how most people used to think before all this happened. A passion for him is everything mixed together. So let's talk about a basic passion. Like desire, let's make it erotic desire, romantic desire, right? I find person X attractive. There's the modern self, right? Judging, looking from a distance, right? That person is attractive. Right? And so it's all mixed up there, right? The object, the person is putting a force on me. I'm responding and attracted to that person. And I'm not standing back and like making judgments, right? The decision's already there, and I'm moving, which is the amazing thing. But you don't move towards everyone you're attracted to, but you feel that movement, right? So if you switch to brownies, which is a little safer, right? You don't eat every brownie you want, but you can feel the fact that that's a brownie. If you're a brownie person, right, and you want to eat it, right? You feel the movement, and it's not your judgment; it's the brownie too. So these things are all mixed up in a passion before modernity, right? So it is the other thing. It is the other person. It is your perception. It is your desire. It is the movement between you. All those things. So that's what a passion is for Aquinas. That's the simplest level of passion. Then there's these other kinds of passions he calls irascible passions. Those are for difficult goods. So an irascible passion, courage is an irascible passion. Maggie Kuhn, founder of the Grey Panthers. You know this quote? Leave safety behind, put your body on the line, stand before the people you fear, and speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. It's all there, right? You know the right thing to do, it's frightening, it's difficult, and you're just torn up, but you're going to do it. And your voice is shaking because it's hard. You're not standing back and saying, this is the rational thing I should do, this is the good I should pursue, why do I feel bad about it, right? But you're doing it in the moment. That's courage for Aquinas. It's an irascible passion. Now, the cool thing about all these passions is they're animal passions. All animals have them. We animals have them. So hope is a passion for him. Hope is a passion for a difficult future good. And here's the part I always wanted, but feel it as a passion now. It's the simultaneous experience of some horrible obstacle that's in the way. You can't have what should be. And you perceive simultaneously in that hope the wrongness, the injustice, the breakdown of the whole system of agency that you've expected all along. And the good is still there. And just like Maggie Kuhn's voice quaking, you're going to reach out for that good and try to get it, right? But it's all mixed up at once. Hope is not this placid place we get to after the crisis, when we calm down, when we do self-care, when we breathe, when we take a sabbatical. Hope is in that moment, that experience of difficulty. It's seeing what's wrong and reaching for the good even as the world's falling apart. And so I offer that to you perhaps as a redescription of hope that might describe how our feelings work, right? One of my favorite prayers is from the translation of the Our Father in the Handmaid's Tale in the book, which is a profound prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. She's trying to say that, Father. In the TV series, it's condensed down, but we don't have much time. And the prayer is, Our Father who art in heaven, what the actual fuck? And so it's the simultaneous reaching out and acknowledging what's there. So I offer that to you as a way of thinking about what hope might be. It might be a bigger thing. It might encompass more feelings than we had. Now, the weird thing about Aquinas is, like, he really thought very specific bodily things here. He thought an irascible passion meant that your heart was beating fast and your blood was racing. Right? And so think of, what do you call them here? Are they cougars here, mountain lions? Cougars, right? The cougar sees prey, it's just a little bit out of what their ability is, right? And so it's completely focused on that, right? And you're a cougar now, you have to leap across this abyss to get that thing, right? So you're utterly focused. Your energies are juiced up, and you're about to exert yourself in a completely committed way. Okay? That's what Aquinas really literally thought hope was. So he asked the question, he says, is hope stronger in young people and drunkards? And he said yes, for physical reasons, because young people's blood is hotter and it moves faster, and if you drink a lot of wine, it heats your blood up too. And like he literally thinks physically that's what hope is. And that's very strange to us. But I ask you, like, doesn't that maybe describe our experience when the whole world is just shattered and everything we planned on isn't working, right? And horrible things are happening that we feel utterly powerless to stop. And so I'll end on this last, I'll end with 2 points. This last point from Aquinas, when he brings animals in, right? Possible. Possible gets turned in modern philosophy into how can you calculate the, something that has a greater than 0 but not 1 probability, right? And he's talking about foxes, and he's talking about the hare that's getting away too, right? So there's the cougar, there's the rabbit, and they're both experiencing hope. And they're not calculating the odds, right? They're like, oh, shit. It's a 1. I give up, right? Actually, he does have something called despair with that. But the question is not that whether it's possible in a rational way. The question is it within your power to try to do something, so you do it. So whether you're the cougar or the hare, you do what you can, right? You move to action. So the mess of that passion, I find very illuminating as I deal with the things that Amy introduced us with, as we face climate change, as we look at the year-on-year numbers for CO2, right? And those start to pop into 4 parts per million now, 4.5 parts per million. The daily year-on-year, it's just a daily, it's noisy, but damn, we don't want it to be looking like 4 parts per million, right? We spent some time above 430 this past month for quite a while. And so this kind of hope does not require me to tap out calm down. This kind of hope says, you see that number, you watch this place you love burn, you watch these people be threatened, you feel threatened yourself, you don't need to move away. That blood pressure, that thing we would call anxiety, that thing we would call distress, is actually the irascible passion kicking in, right? To respond. No, I'm going to do something. Right? And so it's not the strategy that's all worked out. It's the push towards the something. I'll stop there.
Well, thanks, Vince. Appreciate it. And thanks for hosting this, and especially hosting it where I can go to an event and just walk upstairs from my office.
Thank you for giving us this beautiful room.
Yeah, no, it's our best room. So maybe about 15 years ago, I was living in Michigan, and whenever there wasn't snow, I would occasionally make a 40-minute drive on a meandering county highway to run on some state park trails just outside of the town called, of all things, Hell, Michigan. Hell, Michigan. Big Hell fans here. So one Earth Day, on that drive, I listened to story after story on NPR featuring various environmental leaders of various big environmental NGOs. And these stories all had the same pattern. First, there would be about 20 minutes or so of intensive conversation about some horrible state of the world, followed by a question at the very end that the interviewer seemed to take to either be mandatory or profound or both. But even with all of that, they would say, "Do you still have hope?" To which the interviewee would immediately respond, "Oh, of course, there's always hope. You have to have hope." The voice would even change when they would respond. Halfway through my run, it occurred to me that the road to hell had been paved with stories of hope. And of course, I giggled for the remaining. And I still giggle every once in a while. So writing about hope, trying to rethink what hope means, has certainly garnered a heck of a lot of attention lately. Kathy Vince, Rebecca Solnit, Jane Goodall, the late Pope Francis, lots of us have spent lots of time and intellectual and literary energy on hope, and I've done some of that too, although I don't really want to, and you'll find out why. So I do want to say a word about hope, but actually I want to say a word against hope. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, and it likely makes me a terrible person, but my time here is short, so it'll be over quick. I mean, I guess my time here is short in a number of ways, so it depends on what you're wishing for. I don't really worry so much about hope, hope is sometimes used as a throwaway term, something we dole out when we don't really know what else to say, an uneasy verbal tick. I do worry a bit that we use it when it's not really what we mean. When what we mean is something more like a reason to act, or a reason to keep a fighting attitude, or a reason to have resolve. But really, I worry most that hope can be counterproductive and maybe even dangerous at times, if used as a motivator for the attempt to heal our wounded and warped relationship with the world. So let me explain. Hope is, in my mind, quite literally, to desire, quote, to desire with expectation of attainment, or to expect with confidence. And what I want you to notice about that, and many definitions of hope, is that hope is dependent upon or focused on outcomes or consequences. And of course it is. Our dominant Western culture is very consequentialist. We motivate and judge our actions, we pick our professions, and we even do things like evaluate the value of a lived life on what actions, professions, and those lives produce. But here's the problem for me. Consequences are largely out of my control. A culture focused on consequences as a measure of worth is a culture that can be readily manipulated, disempowered, and controlled. A social or environmental movement motivated by consequences is the same. All I have to do, and there are cottage industries doing this all of the time, is convince you that what you do won't, or even that it might not matter, and have snatched your power. And it's in this consequentialism that hope allows you, maybe even expects you, to give away your power. Because the outcomes of your work, your actions, are largely beyond your control. So during the question and answer after a presentation, and I'm sure Vince and Kathy and Jill and Amy have had this as well, it's very common for me to get this question. Michael, it always comes out like that too. Michael, how do you maintain hope in the face of all of this? And my answer is, I don't. I don't have hope. I don't maintain hope. But I also don't do my work. I don't move forward. I haven't decided to set my small shoulder steadily against this heavy door because I have any hope that what I do will have any actual impact in the world or change a damn thing. I'm a first-generation college kid of Nordic heritage from a small place in Wisconsin. My insignificance was impressed upon me at an early age. But I'm also a pretty feral Gen Xer. I was raised on punk rock music, hose water, Pop-Tarts, secondhand smoke, and neglect. We found other ways to motivate ourselves. And what little power we had, we certainly did not give it away. And we knew what Spinoza said. Lack of power consists only in this, that a person allows themselves to be guided by things outside them and to be determined by them. So what I'm suggesting is that our motivations to act rightly on behalf of the present and future of this good green earth are most properly satisfied when we act rightly or virtuously, and when our motivation for that rightness and virtuousness stands stubbornly apart from, not held hostage to, the consequences of our action. And I don't need hope for that. And I'm not alone in this. I'm not a singular kook. I have kook friends. Others have raised the skeptical eyebrow about hope. Nikos Kazantzakis. I don't hope for anything. I don't fear anything. I'm free. Hesiod. Hope is a bad companion for the man in need who sits in an idle place when he has no sufficient livelihood. Francis Bacon. Hope is a good breakfast, but a bad supper. And Derek Jensen. Hope is what keeps us chained to the system, the conglomeration of people and ideas and ideals that is causing the destruction of the earth. So my dream environmental organization or movement works to create and preserve beauty in the world because beauty should remain, period. It works to care for and about biological diversity because the diversity of life merits care, period. It works to help us all care about the future and strive to become good ancestors because that's what our most important effing job is as human beings, period. When we give up, whether these things are attained or not are actually irrelevant to my organization. We've given up hope, the desire with expectation of attainment, because we realized we didn't need hope in the first place. Our metric of success is the enacting of our vision and our mission, and acting in a way that is consistent with that vision and mission, not with the outcomes of our action. Ultimately, we strive to act with integrity. Think about integrity, integer, wholeness, matching what we know and what we value with how we act in the world. But not with the outcomes of what we do, which too often tricks us into giving up our integrity. And finally, I'll say this. I dream of a world where a critical mass, maybe even of hose, water-drinking, Pop-Tart gobbling people, are motivated to act, to remain steadfast, not because they have any hope of some positive state in the future, but because that's what good people do. They act good because goodness is good. My goodness. And I would bet that the outcome of that critical mass would in fact be positive. Or at least I hope it would.
Yeah, so you see, Michael is a horrible person. And nonetheless, he might be onto something. And so for my next book, I wrote a chapter about this Michael's argument, and I think I said it better than he did. So here I go. So here is what Michael wants. He wants us to replace "I hope" with "I will resolve to do the work," or "I will be this kind of person," or "I will lead this kind of life." Then we will stand up for what we believe is right. We will stand fast against what we know is wrong, regardless of our expectations of success or failure. This is what it means to be a good person, an empowered person in a world of rogue winds and tyrants. I will act lovingly toward the earth because I love it. I will listen to the earth because I respect its wisdom. I will join forces with the earth because I am part of its substance and cycles. I will return the earth's gifts because I am grateful. I will celebrate the earth because it is glorious. I will weep for its loss because I cherish it. I will feed the birds because they feed me. Do I have hope? It doesn't matter. Hope or no hope, there is work to be done. Did I get that sort of right?
Pretty good.
I'm like Michael. I give a lecture about how terrible things are, and I give statistics about the loss of the birds, and I cry and I gnash my teeth. And then always the very first question is, but do you have hope? And the most recent request came from the Xerxes Society, which is a group of people who are passionate about invertebrates, right? Worms and butterflies. And they're the people who watch the monarch butterfly populations in California fall by 86%. And they are the ones who have done the studies to learn that 42% of the farms in the United Kingdom have no worms at all. Their hearts must be broken. So when I thought that I was preparing my talk for the Xerxes Society, I thought, I can't even imagine how to cheer these people up, unless I would lie, which I would not do. So I decided to take the academic's way out and offer highlights in the history of hope. So I will do that for 2 minutes, and then in my remaining 4 minutes, I'll read the story. Okay, so the earliest known evidence of hope comes from 66 million years before the present. The fossil records of hope are found in the stomachs of dinosaurs, who continued to eat during the last few minutes, even as they saw the explosion of that ash. They kept on chewing, to keep on chewing. As the world ends, is the definition of hope. 1942, here comes Albert Camus, who thoroughly disapproved of hope. After all the ills of the world flew out of Pandora's box, he said, the last and most dreadful horror came fluttering out. That was hope. Hope is a kind of resignation. And so it empowers all the other nastiness of the world by encouraging us to opt out of resistance. Like your mind. Hope, he went on to say, is like those painted screens that condemned prisoners held in front of their faces when they marched to their deaths. Paintings of swallows flying over spring fields to block out the view of the gallows. Forswearing hope, Camus died in an automobile accident, having written, I know nothing more stupid than to die in an automobile accident. All right. 2011, Barbara Kingsolver, if you run out of hope at the end of the day, get up in the morning and put it on with your shoes. 2012, for the first time, Amazon.com made available back zipper, full leather winged sandals that you can put on with your shoes. I bought a pair for $39.99. So, okay, one more. 2017, Rebecca Solnit wrote that hope isn't like a lottery ticket that you sit on the couch and clutch, feeling lucky. Hope is like one of those red axes that you pull out of the glass case to break down doors in an emergency. Since this is definitely an age of emergencies, This is definitely an age of axes. 2019. I wasn't making very much progress on writing my talk about the Xerxes Society, for the Xerxes Society, for those discouraged lovers of vanishing invertebrates. So I was at a gathering of wise women on the shore of a New England lake, and I asked for advice. Here's what one friend said. Hope is when you look straight at the difficulties, and then you reach deep down inside you to the very core of your wholeness to find there the motivation to keep on with this work of making movement. I'm sorry, it's meaning. The work of making meaning. So the very next morning I was still thinking about hope, and I slid on wet grass, and I fell down a hill, and I broke my ankle in 3 places. And as the ambulance careened toward the emergency room, I lay on my back on the stretcher, and I texted the people at the Xerxes Society, and I said, broke ankle, cannot come to talk to your group about hope. And how I got talking to this, I don't know. Hope is the other thing with feathers. A long time ago, in a small house in Amherst, a young woman named Emily Dickinson sat at a table beside an open window. As flimsy curtains flew over her page, she wrote her famous poem about hope. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Long after, artists illustrated her poem with a bird that always seems to be a perky little thing, sort of a cross between a bluebird and a wren, with its flirty tail and open beak, a juvenile to judge from its big head. I protest on Emily's behalf. That is the wrong bird. This was 1861. White supremacists were gathering in armies and marching north. Loggers were advancing through the continent's virgin forests. Black slaves, having fled rape and lynching, hid in her neighbors' barns. Malaria, typhoid, and cholera ripped through families. The dyings have been too deep for me, Emily wrote, and before I could raise my heart from one, another has come. If hope was perching in her soul, it was something far fiercer than a bluebird. I'm going to suggest a bald eagle, with its hooked beak and terrifying claws. An eagle like the one I once saw come swooping over the inlet, swing out his awful yellow talons, and grab a pink salmon off the water. The eagle flapped to rise with her prize, but her wings caught in the waves and she fell back. Equally hopeful of escape, the eagle and the salmon raised a murderous ruckus of light and sea. Then, resigned, the eagle settled on the water and began to swim her prey towards shore. The nearest rocky point was a half-mile away, and the tide was running hard. But the eagle judged her trajectory, hunched her elbows into scoops, pulled them through the water, and in this way paddled toward shore, dragging the struggling fish. A fog bank blew in and blew out again. To the east, a cloud layer obscured the sun until up it rose, gilding the water. Through it all, the fog and the gold, the eagle paddled on. Finally, she reached the broken rocks and clawed onto shore, exhausted and bedraggled, dragging up the salmon, which was still flapping. This is what hope is in hard times. Not a sweetly singing wren anticipating good fortunes, nor a gull passively waiting for someone to bring him what he hopes for, abdicating any responsibility to feed himself. Hope in hard times is ferocious. It is sharp and strong. It is wild. It is stubborn. It is driven. It may choose its time, but it seizes the chance with open talons and drags it to shore, no matter how long that takes. Hope uses all its strength and wile and never gives up, knowing that if it stops trying, it will drown. It's not a bluebird that sits on Emily's shoulder, tweeting comforting songs into her ear. I picture instead an eagle that pins her soul in its protective grasp. The eagle calls a screeching call that sounds like rocks scraping against a metal hull. Emily is right. There are no words to this song. Hope is an animal cry of rage and will. So call in all the feathered things that are perched somewhere in your weary soul, the harpy eagles and the sharp-shinned hawk. Call in the cassowaries and the shrikes. Call in whatever character traits Velociraptor and the extravagantly feathered thing Tyrannosaurus Rex have perched in your reptilian brain. What we need is strength. Strength in numbers and strength in moral conviction. What we need is shrinking, roaring courage.
Do you all want to respond to each other, or shall I? All right, I'll do a little bit. So there are some themes, a big theme here. Hope is not an idea, not just an idea, it's part of what we do in life. So I love that you said, I'm just going to take the academic way out and do the history of hope, because I'm a preacher. I'm a minister of a religious community. I don't get to take the way out. These are the people that I live from, the theologians, the philosophers. And then every week, I need to show up because a whole lot of their people keep showing up because they've made a commitment to be in a community, and we talk about the community, we all love community, I'm here for the community. But what does that actually mean? People are there for each other. Or sometimes they're there for themselves, but quickly, because there are a lot of other people there, they realize they need to be there for each other. That's what we're working on. That's what this religious commitment is about. And okay, we're Unitarian Universalists. We are free to believe all kinds, whatever we want to believe, all that stuff. You all around town have heard at the UU, they believe whatever you want, right? It's a little more than that. It's a long history of people making commitments to each other. Feeling good. So this thing about being good, where was it? Michael, I did. Here. Right. Strive with integrity. What does it mean to be good? Goodness. Of course, philosophers have talked about it for a long time, but goodness is not just an abstraction. Goodness is only measured in relationship, like ethics. Ethics are not just ideas. If we are living ethically, we only know that when other people say to us, yes, in relation to me, you're ethical. You can't claim, I'm ethical, I'm just ethical. I want to be ethical. No. Real ethics is real relationship. So the relationships are actually totally real, and sometimes we escape the realness of the relationships by, no offense, philosophizing a lot and theologizing a lot because we are human and that's what we do. What do we know? What can we know? But at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, in the middle of the day, right now, we're living, breathing people who have some responsibilities. And the conversations are about what are our responsibilities. So just a few weeks ago, Pope Francis, when he died, I have to let you know that when he was elected Pope, all the Unitarian ministers I know were like, yes, he's our Pope. We're Unitarians, right? So anyway, we claimed it. So he, when he died, I had just received a copy of his autobiography in the mail. It's titled Hope. And in the introduction, he sort of said, hope is the movement, the tension between the way things are and the world we dream. It's the movement, it's the constant tension. And if the dream looks like it's failing, then we have to re-dream it because there's always movement. There has to be movement, or we're not alive. We're moving towards what we think is better. So I understand that to me, like Rebecca Solnit, like Joanna Macy, who had this beautiful book, Active Hope. She teaches from a Buddhist perspective. She says, it's okay to not be optimistic. Buddhist teachings say feeling that you have to maintain hope can wear you out. That's what we've just been talking about. So just be present. And when you're worrying about whether you're hopeful or hopeless or pessimistic or optimistic, who cares? The main thing is that you're showing up, that you're here, that you're finding ever more capacity to love this world, because it will not be healed without that. So the work that I'm doing, and if people ask me if I have hope, I will say, I don't have time to think about it. People are living and dying and in need and high anxiety, and have been, especially since the pandemic. The anxiety level is out of here, right? People are in need. I don't have time to stop and say, am I hopeful or not? But I know that something keeps me showing up. And I think that something is love. And love is the idea that no matter how bad it is right this minute, there's still some possibility for something. And that could be for one species, or that could be for a few more degrees less, or that could be for just being with this person who's going out of their mind because they can't take this anymore. There have been some people who have gone out of their minds, like when the election happened. So for me, what we're aiming for is to live in right relations. And that is not an abstraction either. Right relations is a constantly moving target. We have to keep saying to each other, what would feel right to you now, and what feels right to me now, and how is it now, and how is it now? It changes. As Pope Francis said, if the dream is falling apart, you have to redream it, as long as we're alive. So I've just run through this beautiful book by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson called What If We Get It Right? People who are younger than me, a lot of them people of color, okay, stop despairing. Show up, come on, show up, whether you're despairing or not. Show up, build the community. The community can act in different ways. And so when I see people, especially younger than me, because I'm okay, hopefully I don't have to stay around very much longer, and that's kind of a cop-out. People younger than me that have to keep living in this, they're saying, show up for each other, be there with each other. And don't just talk about the ideas with each other, say, how are you? How are you? How are you? Take all of the good theology about what is goodness and all that, and be with each other and help each other do the best we can. So I think that's my experience of what hope is. It's not a flowery idea. It is the reality of putting our bodies there. You all have said all of it. Putting our bodies there, continuing to do what's needed, changing our idea of what's needed when what's needed changes. Keep learning, keep going, as long as we can. Okay, all right, well, here's one of the things I forgot to say. So a lot of what we do is we're doing semantics and psychology. So the semantics is, okay, so what does hope mean? Well, I don't like that definition of hope. Let's have a different definition of hope. It's not Emily Dickinson's. It's Rebecca Solnit's. It's not it's the Acts. That's semantics. How are we going to define it? So we've done a lot of that. We are definitely engaging in semantics. So that's good. But it's the psychology that I wonder about. And my spouse, who works with well, in a lot of stages of sometimes mental illness and stuff like that, it says that psychologists say, in order to not be hopeless, you have to have some sense of efficacy, or that what you're doing makes a difference. You have to have some sense of purpose, that it's worth doing, and you have to have a worldview that sense of purpose fits into, so you feel like you're doing what you're doing. So let's think about it in psychological terms. Even one of the ideas you yourself have worked on, what gives you a sense of efficacy, of purpose? What's the worldview that you are moving in?
Well, geez, Jill. Yes, we have been invited to philosophize, and we have come to philosophize, and one of the things that philosophers do, I mean, like geologists study rocks, ornithologists study birds, philosophers study ideas.
Yes.
And one of those ideas that we study is hope.
Yes.
Although, you know, when my daughter was very small, a woman came to her and said, "What does your mother do?" And Erin says, "She does philosophy." And the woman said, "Well, what is philosophy?" And Erin said, "Oh, it's just something women do." So here we are, and we have come, and that's what we're doing.
Yes.
But now you're asking us quite a different question that requires quite a different kind of thinking. Because instead of looking at ideas, you're asking us to look deep into ourselves and ask it, I think if I understand you, ask the question, for myself, what is it that does the work of hope, that is to say, that motivates me to keep on going? Is that the question?
I think so. That's a
Good, because that's what philosophers do, is clarify the questions.
Yes.
My work
Exactly what I was going to say.
I'm not a philosopher, but I
Yes.
but I am an emeritus psychologist. But no, I just respectfully say that psychology is a philosophy. The modern self is right there, right? So here's this person who has, do I have a sense of agency, or is this something I can do? Do I have a sense of purpose that guides me, that provides an orientation with some sort of ethical code or action? Do I have a worldview that makes sense of all that? Well, what if the world gets completely ripped apart, right? And so I hear this often, in the climate anxiety world, is like, find something you can do, right? And do that, and that'll help you cope, and put that energy into that. Well, put the energy into that, yeah, right? But find that something you can do. If that's to help you deal with the pain, that's misunderstanding the pain, I think, right? And so that's why I find this like I am not. Amy can attest to this, right? I am not the theologian that shows up and says, "Let me tell you how Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century answered all these questions." That's not my deal. I didn't go there for that. But this is a glimpse of how people acted and imagined themselves in the world before we got all shooted off and psychology came into being. And so what strikes me about that is that it's relational from the start, right? And so what do I do when I see someone suffering? When I see something destroyed, something that I love, right? What do I do? Well, in this, that's a passion. I'm drawn into a relationship with that. So the more pain, the better, right? My blood pressure is high and I'm freaking out. Yes. What else should I be doing right now, right? Now, I'm not saying like, if you're overwhelmed and you need to tap out, and I'm not saying you're wrong for that, right? But those animal responses, that's how you do the hard thing, right? And so I find this fascinating, is it just draws the lines differently, right? And so if I'm having climate anxiety, I really should be having climate anxiety. We hit 430 2 weeks ago, and we stayed there for 2 weeks. And my ears are ringing now because I'm saying that, and there's energy there. And it's not something I need to find some compensatory way out of. You mentioned David Jensen. I have you and David Jensen in my head all the time. I said, David Jensen's essay, Beyond Hope, just blows me away because, a certain kind of hope keeps us chained to the system, which is, you get on the plane and you hope that pilot lands this thing because you don't got the wheel, right? And he says, we don't need that. We have the wheel. We have something. But he says at the end, when I give up on surviving, when that me in that system dies, all that's left is naked, animal, me, fighting for the things I love. And I'm like, amen, brother. But that's what hope is, right? And so that naked animal me that the world is, that I can't get away from the pain in the world. That's where I want to be. Now, I'm not saying I'm not saying that this always works, but if we can draw those lines differently and see those negative feelings of anxiety and grief and mourning and anger not as something we get past so we can begin to hope, but as the demand that we're being drawn into, and we are responding and saying, no, we do something else. Now, hope is not a plan there. Hope is the energy that gets you to plan, right? So now you're with other people and you're saying, hell no, do something. So I'm from Dayton, Ohio, and when we had our mass shooting, the governor came to the memorial service in the square. He's a kind old conservative man. And he was talking, and the crowd started to scream in unison, do something. Do something. And it shut it down. And it just... Now, that's not a plan. Okay. But when we feel that in our heart, like 4:30, and so the energy is the do something, and then there's all kinds of other things that come from us as human beings and our plans and politics and perhaps the agency. We push into that. But I just find redrawing those lines so that the anxiety and the grief are the relationships, right? My God, if I'm not anxious about that, there's something wrong with me here. If I'm not full of grief about the fires that have happened here, if I'm not full of grief about what's happening in countries where we shut off people, right? Children are being born with HIV now. Right now. And so, if that doesn't make my voice quake, then the relationship's not there. Now, what flows from that? If I can redefine that as the hope, that pushing back, and then we go from there.
Yes. Yes.
It's your turn.
What's the question? Yeah, go for it. Maybe I'll forget the question.
Yes, but be careful. Be careful, because yes, go for the grief. And I tell my students, Robin Kimmerer says, what do you ask yourself? What do you love too much to lose? And I say to my students, okay, make a list. Let's start right now. Get it out. If we're going to write about climate change, that's what we're going to do first. We're going to write a list of what we love too much to lose. And they start writing, and they start tearing up. And we say, do we have to? Do we have to think that these things that we love more than life are going to disappear in our lifetimes, on our watch? I go, yes, you have to. You have to say those, you have to make that list. You have to say what you love too much to lose. You have to say their names, and you have to say the risk to them. And you have to grieve their loss. But boy, be careful about the difference between grief and despair. Because grief is a measure of love. Grief is saying, I love this, it is worthy. It is deeply, desperately worthy, and I'm going to lose it. Despair means nothing. There is no meaning to this. And if I lose it or not, it doesn't matter. And that's where you lose all, that's like losing hope and going down with the ship. So, yeah, that's all I want to say is be careful.
Did I figure out the question?
Well, the question was sort of the ideas that you are working on, that you can say what's happening for you as those ideas are coming out of you.
To be honest, when we speak about the unraveling of the world, to be honest, I actually think that's kind of my job. Because I think the world that we created intellectually is why we're in this mess to begin with. I wrote an essay a few years ago with a dear friend. We blamed Western philosophy for the current mess that we're in, and we begged apology on behalf of all the philosophers, all 12 of them in the world. Because, and I think that's my job, is to destroy that intellectual tradition and create something from it. And so I guess what keeps me going is and it's not hope, it's not an anticipation, it's just an obligation to continue to do that work, to tear that down and replace it with something else, and to sniff it out. I mean, the other thing that I will say, and this is one of the reasons why I'm in the College of Forestry, is to sniff it out where we think it's not, where we think we're doing something that's really different, but all we're doing is another form of reflection of that dominant Western worldview, and to call that out when possible. So I think for me, doing that work is I guess what I've taken on as the gift that I feel that I need to express.
Yeah. So just recently, there's a book that I've become aware of by a person named Vanessa Andreotti. It's called Hospicing Modernity. And that's what she's talking about. Like, if we're just reflecting and using everything we're reflecting on out of the model that we've built to reflect on the model we built, it's over. And until we begin to say, let's destroy this model, how are we going to think differently? So, like, philosophy, now it is the job. As Pope Francis said, if the dream is falling apart, re-dream. So maybe that is what we're talking about. And the semantic thing of let's redefine hope. We have to. How are we going to re-dream a world we can live in that can survive?
While you're recommending books, a person who works with Vanessa is Dugald Hine, H-I-N-E. The book is At Work in the Ruins. And it's doing just what you say, Michael, and you're reading it. We've been led astray. We've been suckered. Descartes suckered us. And when you're at the end of this great centuries-long experiment, testing whether those ideas are going to be workable, and the results are in. What are we going to do instead? That's the word.
Can I interject a question? So you all just spent several days up in the Andrews, and one of my favorite piece of Vince's writing is an essay from Commonweal called Tears and Ashes that you wrote after the holiday farm fire. But we just talked about your experience of walking the Old Growth Trail, this place that you love deeply, and being in the space of tears and ashes in a place you loved. So I wonder if you've just been in that place of tears and ashes. What do you bring back from the Andrews to add to this conversation? What do the tears and ashes add?
Yeah, we spent an entire day wandering through a forest that had burned to cinders. And it wasn't just the forest that was destroyed, it was the roots that were burned as well. And the trees were falling and had fallen, and we should probably call on, well, I don't know where to go with this except to say, everyone says, oh good, it regrows and it's really beautiful. But it wasn't. It was terrifying. And they said, yeah, because the tree litters, and as the tree grows and all the detritus falls, it gets this kind of circle of stuff around it. And then when the fire hits that fire seizes on it, it goes down and down and down, and it burns away the roots, and it burns up into the trunk.
Yeah.
So what might look like a black spar is just like this. So I was frightened in ways I hadn't been frightened before.
Yeah.
Understanding the nature of the loss. But we have with us David, who is a photographer, who is making photography that shows the beauty that comes out of the ashes, and maybe we should we should put him on the spot for a minute.
Back there.
What's beautiful about a dead forest, David?
I think you're referring to images in a series I call Still, and they were made along the Mackenzie River. And the beauty that I felt was the connection as a human being to the tree. Had a similar call. And I could see that.
Yep. So we have some responses. Lookout Creek Stand was one of the most beautiful places on earth.
Yeah.
And there, once the entire earth was that way, once the entire western slope was that way, and we cut it down and we dried it out and we heat the earth and we dried the earth. And so to know a place like that is to open yourself up to enormous pain when it's gone. And so Douglas fir forests burn and stand clearing fires, and that's where Douglas fir forests come from. But there's not another oak grove stand over the ridge anymore. So these losses become sixth extinction losses, not ecosystem cycles. So I was asked to speak about this up at the Andrews, and I told the story of an older friend who told me about the death of his partner. He said his last breath shakes me still. And that's always stuck with me as a sort of lesson about loving, right? Is that you're gonna die, or you are. And that's gonna hurt. But that's relationship, right? And so the pain of that loss is the passion, and we can let that drive us. And, so when he told me that, he wasn't saying, get a lover because it's great. He was saying, like, I'm still undone by that. Then I still live. But he's fully alive. And that's what this kind of grief is, right? To be connected to a place. And so that valley, I know the numbers, I know the losses, right? But to know a place and to lose it is fundamentally different because of that relationship. And so I would say like that one, there are a lot of lessons out of this old thing that I found. And one of them is like the more of that, the better. The more relationships you have, the more connections you have, the better. And they will tear you apart. In so many ways, things are going to be so hard. but hold on and embrace and feel and live. And so this hope is comic, not in the sense that it's at all funny, but it just keeps going. And so yeah, we don't have many of those stands left. We don't have many years left of that at all, right? And folks in the room can give us the numbers. And so the losses are real, and the pain is real, but hope is not that somehow things are going to work out. Hope is the refusal to give up and to keep going.
Yeah. It's grief work, and for everyone who has to, especially your hardest loss, the work is always to learn how to carry the grief, which will never go away, and keep going. And so maybe instead of talking about hope, we need to be talking more about how are we tending to each other to tend our grief. And it's mentioned, we need to tend our grief. We need to tend our grief. But we're not really tending it much very often. And maybe that is exactly what hope will end up looking like if we learn to tend the grief together. And when we say things like, I'm more frightened than I've ever been. Okay, when I hear you say that, that makes a difference for me. When I hear somebody else say, that's it, this is the limit, I think I can, then I pay attention and think, okay, things are changing. And we've gotten away with just doing business as usual. Yeah, statistics are bad, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah, the statistics are bad, I'm just going to keep going. No more business as usual. Maybe that's part of what hope is now looking like. Should we take some other questions for anybody? Yes.
What is the difference between hope and faith?
What is the difference between hope and faith? Okay, I want to give you a Unitarian thing. Faith is not believing in things that just aren't true. It's a simplistic thing. So I think faith is shown over history to be the ability to trust. When I say I have faith in you, you know what that means. I have some trust. So in the whole process, what can you trust? You can't trust the outcomes, you can't trust the models. Can you trust? If you can be clear about what you are willing to trust, that becomes a form of hope.
I would say something similar. I'll give you, so this is actually a thing that Thomas Aquinas talked about. So hope, the animal hope is a passion, and it's not related to faith at all. Faith isn't one of the things that all animals share. Then he makes it into a theological virtue, faith, hope, love, and he does a cool thing there, because hope's hanging out in a place, because he's got faith. Right? Faith is this supernatural grace that lets you believe things that are beyond what humans can fully conceive of, and that's one thing, right? So it's a cognitive grace, it's a rational grace for him, it's about reason, and then hope's this other thing. He's got love, which is the goal of them all, and love is this infinite relationship. The theological love is this infinite relationship with God that's impossible for the creature to ever do. And so we're being moved into that. But hope's this weird thing, but the cool thing about hope is that it's not rational for him at all. It's some other trust into the impossibility of love. And he specifically has it there as not faith and not related to reason. It's this ability for you to trust into the impossibility of love. And it's just kind of cool that he said it wasn't faith, right? There's this other thing. And for him, it's about being moved into this impossibility.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you for the talk. Everyone, thanks for sharing your thoughts on it. I really appreciate it. Very thought-provoking. And I have some thoughts. I want to feedback a little. I think to ask your question largely of Michael, but I'd like to hear from everyone. You know, we're struggling with this idea of what hope is in some ways that philosophers do, and there are different conceptions. I heard both Vince and Michael articulate it as a kind of intentional state, a passion for something by intention. I mean, it takes an object, right? Passion for something or desire for something. And what I understood from Kathy's position, really regarding courage and strength and commitment, fierce commitment, speaks more about kind of character in a way. And then there's other traditions, like Brian Traynor, a philosopher, and other somewhat more kind of take it as a kind of general phenomenological kind of orientation, just the way you are oriented towards all of your actions in the world. It's not that specific, it's a kind of framing of your experiences. And with that kind of puzzle of what hope is, and with these options, I heard Michael suggesting, or sort of saying, advancing with me, is that important actions can be undertaken without hope. That we might do it for reasons or virtues or other kinds of integrity, but we can take important actions without hope. So really there's this question about the relation between action and hope. That's the core of the puzzle. But Vince and Kathy seem to be more on the side that if indeed people can undertake difficult actions towards the important goals with passion or with courage, if indeed they're successful and they do these things, which we see, then it implies that in some sense they have hope, that they carried on, and that they did it, that they had hope. And that's then a puzzle with Michael's position, because either hope is there implied by the action, or the actions can happen without the hope. And I wonder, so you can see, Michael, why it's sort of I'm sympathetic to the view that we can do things without hope, but I'm not sure what hope is, so I'm also sympathetic to the other side of this point, that if we have the Constitution to carry on, that tells us a little bit what about the answer is that hope is.
Yeah.
That it must be something that satisfies hope must have been there, because it got done. So maybe you can address these rumors.
I think one of the things I'm really fascinated by is the need to take all of these things, which are pretty disparate from one another, and label them all hope. You know, why can't things be other things? And I'm interested in that almost like, I'm not a psychologist, but I've had a postdoc who's a psychologist, so I've learned just enough to be a little dangerous. And I wonder through her eyes, what's going on with this concept of all concepts? We could be fixated on a million concepts, but there's something that's really fascinating going on in our brains, our minds, about the concept of hope, because we're defining it in these pretty radical different ways, and then we're like arguing over which one is right. And like, no, it's not this, it's this. And I'm like, and at a certain point, I just throw my hands up, like, let's stop using that word. Let's start using words that describe these different things. And that, yeah, I mean, I've had that in my mind for a little while, but this conversation kind of brings that.
Would you say the same thing? Would you say the same thing with love?
I probably would, just because and love may be a more clear example, because we know there are cultures in our own historically that mean all kinds of different things by love, and we lump them into a category, and we can probably say, well, they're slightly different things. We at least modify the word with a love with another word that eventually probably could just replace it. So there may be big concepts like that you know, we want to use a blanket label, but we know it means a lot of different things, but we still want to use the blanket label, and I think that creates knots for us. Thanks I appreciate how you articulated that question.
Can we go straight to the proposition and look at this proposition with a real skeptical look? Is it or is it not true that unless we have some sort of hope of achieving a desired outcome, we cannot act? That seems to me to be absolutely false.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, can we agree on that?
It's basically pop psychological theory. Everyone sort of assumes that. So without hope, you cannot undertake the important actions.
Yeah, and that's just where I think arguing about hope is helpful, right? Because if hope, as it's commonly understood, is a positive feeling about a possible plan of action, right? And you say, well, that's what you need to act. Well, then a lot of us are just going to sit at home and cry, right? Or get drunk, or both. Or both. Or both. And so I'm utterly surprised by how this redefinition illuminates things, right? So yeah, I increasingly find that modern definition to be a real problem, and its popularization and its sentimentalization is a problem. There are, so Derek Jensen is beyond hope, and Michael De La Torre has, I think it's against hope. In the end, he says, like hope for him, apologies to the folks in the room, hope for him is the middle class college student who goes on the Central American immersion and says, we went to the people who live in the dump, and I'm struck by how they still have hope, and he's like, the whole book's about that, and I'm like, well, that's, maybe we could talk about that differently with that person. But in the end, he says, these people, people don't have hope. The mother who's carrying her daughter across the desert to, in a migration, she doesn't have hope. She just says, fuck it, we're doing this. And I'm like, all right, if you want to call it that, that's fine. Right? But, or Derek Jensen saying, just poor, naked, vulnerable me fighting for those I love. If you don't want to call it hope, fine. Right? But like that's the thing.
Yeah.
I just want to make an observation, and it's related directly to this desire of looking toward the future, whether hope is the right word or not, and I agree with your thought of semantics. I don't think I'm the oldest person in this room. I'm certain I'm not the youngest person in this room. There's a variety of ages and people in this room, and the passion that you have shared and this gentleman shared, I find hopeful because of that. So I'm glad I'm here. I'm hoping a lot of the other people are glad they are here too. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, and then.
If the dinosaur keeps chewing when the meteor strikes, and it's the only thing it knows how to do, is that still hope?
Are you asking really a metaphoric question? That we keep on doing what we've always been doing because that's what we do? Is that hope? I mean, in some ways that is this kind of blind hope. We just kind of carry out the same patterns, live out the same patterns. You can call that hope. It's probably just avoidance of the work to be done. No, the dinosaur thing was a joke.
It was my favorite part of it. I like the dinosaur and the eagle. I felt like I was surprised that we agreed so much. Because all the metaphorical layers of dinosaur and meteors, but I mean, dinosaur has to eat, right? It's, stopping eating is not the answer there either. Right? It's doing the animal thing, which is to preserve its life, and that is not adequate in the face of a extinction level meteor impact. We are not facing an extinction level meteor impact, so we should have dinner tonight, and we should keep fighting.
I guess I would say, given the various things that people mean by hope, that certainly could qualify as hope, but I also think that's evidence that we got a problem with the concept of hope.
Yeah.
That counts as hope. I'm not so sure hope is all that star-spangled lost.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been just a wonderful set of ideas being shared. And something that I think that you initially need to put in there, there's there's a carving on some monument in the Middle East from thousands of years ago that says, "Children no longer obey their parents." And the world has been going to hell in a handbasket since the dawn of time. Just things are collapsing and it just has changed. And what we often don't forget is, no matter how we personally try, and what our motivations are, we've talked a lot about, more on a personal level, what is so important. There is this collective phenomenon that is beyond any of us. In other words, you can add up the parts, but you won't have the sum. The whole of our collective action is beyond what any of us can do or perceive. And somehow that has brought humanity through all these crises. Not to say that we should just count on, we're gonna just somehow do it, but I think if we turn it into just what is hope for me, and should I have hope, and if you don't have hope, you just kind of drift away. Just realize that even if you have those feelings, collectively, there is something happening that none of us, personally or even in groups, can control. And somehow, we somehow find a way. What's find a way might be something that is not what we personally want. It may be a greatly reduced population of humans, and it may be, but there may be something that is coming that will just in some ways, when looked back by 1,000 years from now, we'll say that was an amazing thing that happened then. Just like that.
This is a question I've been trying to ask all the wise people that I encounter. You all definitely meet that criteria. In your opinion, what are the pressure points of change? If we're looking at the different spheres, right? We have cultural, political, all these different spheres. Within those, in your opinions, what are the pressure points of change? What do we push on to make differences?
Yeah. I'm really influenced by Donnell Meadows' thinking on, well, in one article it's 9, and in one article it's 12 pressure points of change. She's used that phrase. It's exactly what she's talking about. And she sort of ranks them. It reminds me of cognitive hierarchy theory, where the ones down at the bottom are fewer and far more important, but far harder to push on. And what's interesting is, for her, the most important pressure points of change are philosophical, worldview remediation, value shifts. The bottom three are all philosophical. But what she points out is that we spend almost all of our energy on the things that matter the least, and she points out we do it wrong. And it's really sort of powerful, and I can't even think if I agree with we do it wrong, because my head is spinning by that point. But I also think that people have to attend to their gifts, and not everybody can or wants to focus on those. That's what's beautiful about the 12. There are 12 different targets to shoot at that different people can focus on. But it would be great if we were somehow in unison, and it would be great if when we focus on those other ones, we are actually doing it right. That would be awesome.
I mean, it's almost as if you're saying ideas matter.
I didn't think about that. What I thought about is what else matters.
All my career, I've really been some theologian, and I'm not an idea person, even though I have ideas here. I'm struck by the power of material structures, and so to tie in with the relationship passion question, the way in which commodity relationships separate us from each other in reality. Right? So the way in which the commodity form separates us from knowing what it is we're doing, right? So you walk into the grocery store and there's 10,000 things and you don't know anything about any of them, right? Unless you buy the fair trade coffee, and you got one, right? And maybe it's Oregon, so you can get dairy and maybe some vegetables too. But the rest are saying nothing, so we don't know what we're doing, right? And so that those kinds of relationships, that material relationship beyond our ideas, is doing something to it. Pull out the phone and relate to the whole world through that, right? Have friendships through that, or do political organization through that. We organized against the Gulf War through that. Hundreds of thousands of people were in the streets the days leading up to the invasion. None were thereafter, and we didn't know who we were because we did all our relationships through that thing, through the internet, right? It just went away. Civil rights movement was, community by community, church by church. If you weren't going to the next protest, Mrs. Johnson, who's known you since Sunday school, was going to be having some word with you, right? United for Peace and Justice, I don't respond to emails. And so the state, too, right? And so the state has been taken over, right? And so we're still here. There's 330 million of us, and so I don't have a pressure point, but I know that these are the ways in which we're made into individuals who don't have any stickiness and who don't have passions in relationship with one another. So use those things lightly, right? I mean, obviously I'm going to go to the grocery store. Obviously I'm a blue sky now, not Twitter. I burned that up, and I burned up a lot of things I'd like to have back, but I'm done with the salute. But realize that the relationships have to be there in some other form, or else when it shuts off, it's gone. And so I don't have a pressure point, but I can say that's how we're putting our little boxes without power. And so back to passion then, if we're bodies being moved by the world and other bodies, that might be a cool thing to imagine ourselves as, and question the screen and the debit card. But I don't have a pressure point. I don't know.
So this might be a shorthand way of saying what I think I hear you saying, Vince. Don't give it to. So the student says to me, students are always saying, what can one person do? What can one person do? And the answer to the question is stop being one person.
Yeah.
Bill McKibben.
Yes. Exactly. Stop being one person. So I actually just said yesterday to a group of people about like this. Imagine if you knew that one of the people next to you was grieving or was in pain, and you really knew it. How would you relate to them right now? So then look around and recognize that everybody is grieving and in pain. So small talk has very little place there. And that's a habit we have. That we'll just do the small talk and hope someday somebody gets around to helping us do not the small talk. Should we do anything about it? How will we respond to each person, even if we don't know? There's that Hindu thing, namaste. I honor the divine in you. What is in me is in you. I see it in you. I see it in you. I see it in you. That's beyond small talk. So yeah, those are practices we can do to stop being one person.
And honor the pain in the trees.
Yes.
And the weather.
Yes.
And the birds.
Yeah.
And the
Exactly.
soil.
On that point, thank you for that. I want to agree and just throw the last thing in there. If it's animal hope, animals have hope. And I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of the Mackenzie River Valley and the salmon restoration projects there, right? So there's one way in which we have a plan, and we have some sort of data that we can help them by restoring the river, right? The other thing is the salmon keep fighting. They keep hoping, right? They're doing the difficult future good, right? So when I asked one person who's involved every fall, like, what's September 17th? What's it like, right? And he sends me a picture of a salmon, right? And so she's hoping, right? And so it's not just us trying to get our act together and move, but if she has a passion and she's hoping, we can hope with her, right? And so then all the science and all the debates about rivers and water and salmon and life and the million things I don't understand, right? That's all trying to align ourselves with her hope, right? And in me give you one last weird thing, but Aquinas, he thinks there's something called natural passion, which we would call gravity and stuff. But he thinks that rivers have hope. They want to do a certain thing. And so we can hope with that too. And then, so these are all relational categories. And so, yeah, I'm sorry.
I want to say one word for the introverts. And I want to say that because those of us who are introverts do not usually get words in an extroverted world. I don't mind being one person. I don't mind doing this work on my own. And I think there are other people who are okay with that. I am grateful to no end that people find solace in community. And I do think that's the way forward. But some of us have different paths. And I want those of you who are experts to know that there's nothing wrong with you because of that. Seriously, there's nothing wrong with you because of that. And I would say, come and talk to me, but I'm an introvert.
And Jill, this might be the last one.
Okay.
You're good, yeah.
Somebody back there had a question? Yeah.
As a young college student who is kind of in a place of being stuck in limits, I feel limited sort of by the ability to actually do something about the climate when I feel so much passion for it, but I don't feel hope. I look at the news and I ask myself why would I feel hope? And so as someone who feels like they can't do a lot at this point in their life, but I have passion, what do I do if I can't play with that passion?
So let me suggest something to you, right? So like, I hear you. If you took away, you can't really do anything about it. Back to that, Aquinas talking about the rabbit being chased, right? The rabbit does what it can, right? It runs as hard as it can. And so like, there's nothing you can directly do to stop that number from going up, right? It's not like there's one thing you do. But what do you feel like doing when you read something or when you see something? Like what? If the phrase was "I can't do anything about," like what's happening in you then? What are you being impelled to do? Scream. Yeah, scream. Scream.
But also find something to do. But it seems harder and harder in our political climate.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
in this country to actually do
Yeah.
something that feels like it matters. And I know that I'm like bigger than one person and that people contribute to society in ways and that adds up to be a whole change. But someone who feels maybe it's easy to feel very small.
Okay, so yeah, all those butts, and I honor all those butts, right? But you wanted to scream.
Yeah.
So what happens if you scream? Like, what do you want to scream?
Everything. I just anger.
Yeah.
It's angering.
So like, I'm not offering this to you as something you need to do, right? But it's like, what if you just started screaming? Would that do something?
For me, yeah.
Right.
For me, yeah. For everyone else.
No, but like, if you start screaming, it's not going to do something just for you, right? You're surrounded by people and you're screaming.
Right.
So like, so like, again, I'm not trying to offer this to you as a cute answer, but if it's a passion and the energy's in you, and the first thing you want to do is scream, then maybe that's what you should do. And if you're in your dorm or your apartment or you're in class, if you're in this, right, scream and scream and scream, and we might scream with you, or we don't know what'll happen, right? But right now we're saying, how many? I mean, that seems so true to me, right? Is it? Yeah. I'll share something I've never shared with anyone else before. I was in my office during the Holiday Farm fire, watching the fire line burn into the Andrews towards the old growth forest. And I was listening to Elaine singing on the Max Richter piece Voices, which is this celebration of universal declaration of human rights. And she's reciting it with this beautiful, righteous voice, and these angelic voices are coming. And Max Richter is not derived. This is the soundtrack there, and it's beautiful. 2, 2, 2, 2. And it's beautiful. And they have that right. But they don't get it, right? And those voices are singing, and it sounds so lovely, but that's not what's happening. And I was looking at the infrared map of the fire, watching it burn into places, and I knew what those places were. And I began to sob more than I've ever sobbed in my life. Uncontrollably loud sobs, and my door was closed in my office. And what would happen if my door was open? What if that wasn't a private thing I do before I figure out what the hell to do? What if that's the thing I do? And I wrote about it, and I never shared it before because I don't know what to do with that, but that's what that was the movement, right? And so if you scream, and I saw, and it was a loud sob. It was like, what do my peers think's happening in my office sob? Right? What if we just did that? Right? And so and I don't have a theory of how the world changes because of that, but I do know that both you and I have been taught that, well, that's a personal psychological thing you deal with, and then you go find your strategy. But if that's what our bodies want to do, maybe that's something, that's where we start. Instead of, let me catch my breath, let me get my voice back, let me think, let me say, what if we just start, what if your body right there just did that?
Isn't that the animal thing?
Can we thank our panelists for what they did? And you are very invited to the next 3 events also on the nature of hope. Thank you so much for being here.